The European Union Election Observation Mission to the Philippines releases today its final report on the observation of the 12 May 2025 national midterm elections. Upon the invitation of the Philippine authorities, the Election Observation Mission carried out its work between 28 March and 2 June 2025. The mission deployed 226 observers from European Union member states, as well as from Canada, Norway, and Switzerland. This final report is our legacy and presents the mission's findings and conclusions following a long-term observation of the electoral process. First, let me praise the Filipino voters. The turnout was unprecedented for a midterm election in this country and showed a strong commitment to democratic values despite persistent challenges that included electoral violence, vote buying, concentration of political power among a few families, and a legal framework marked by significant gaps and ambiguities. These shortcomings call for reforms and for a comprehensive review of the electoral legal framework, which have also been advocated by many Filipino politicians, candidates, officials, journalists, and members of the civil society. In this report, we are echoing the voice of the hundreds of Filipino interlocutors we met during the mission. We reported what we observed, but also their concerns and their suggestions. This final report includes a total of 21 recommendations that the Election Observation Mission, in line with its mandate, now offers to the consideration of the Filipino politicians and electoral authorities, civil society, and the public at large. The proposed recommendations involve all the electoral process, from the campaign environment and finance to voting, counting, and the tabulation of results. Among these, we have identified 7 priority recommendations. The need to recodify and harmonize the legal framework to remove discrepancies and inconsistencies, including making explicit in the legislation the right of access to polling precincts to all duly accredited election observers and party representatives. The need to eliminate restrictions on the rights to vote and be elected for convicted imprisoned citizens after a sentence is served. The need to repeal criminal defamation provisions, including for online activities, in favor of civil sanctions. The need to introduce temporary special measures to achieve gender parity in order to see more women in elected and appointed positions. We also recommend that the Commission on Elections take effective measures to ensure the secrecy of the vote, because we believe this is one of the most effective means to address vote buying. These measures could include, for example, improving the layout of polling precincts at booths, enhancing the training of electoral boards, and strengthening voter education by explaining why the secrecy of voting is important. I will now go into greater detail about our findings. The European Union Election Observation Mission final report finds that the COMELEC administered the elections efficiently, took proactive measures to promote inclusiveness, and attempted to address entrenched vote-buying practices. However, the report also considers that COMELEC's extensive powers to exclude and disqualify candidates based on non-objective criteria and to suspend the proclamation of duly elected officials are not in line with key international commitments. The authority to reject nuisance candidates based on a subjective assessment of their credibility poses challenges for newcomers, reinforcing public perceptions that elections are dominated by elites, limiting political pluralism and establishing an uneven playing field. Before the elections, the COMLEC issued resolutions introducing changes on overseas voting, digital campaigning, disinformation, artificial intelligence, and campaign activities. Resolutions addressing red tagging, vote buying, and the use of discriminatory and sexist speech were largely welcomed. However, some of them introduced new rules, raising concerns about legal hierarchy and certainty. The Commission on Elections communicated effectively electoral preparations, including on the new automated counting machines and the use of social media platforms. Civil society organizations reported a marked improvement in information sharing. However, the report also reflects that the electoral administration responded dismissively or punitively to some concerns. This was the case of a cyber libel complaint filed by COMELEC against a candidate who expressed concerns about the potential hacking of automated counting machines. Regarding the legal framework, we believe that it provides a basis for democratic elections. However, nearly half of the provisions of the 1985 Omnibus Election Code are superseded by the Constitution and other laws, leaving the electoral legislation scattered and not harmonized. Key issues remain unaddressed, namely a comprehensive regulation of political parties and provisions to curb the dominance of political families. Several laws continue to impact human rights and the electoral environment, including the Anti-Terrorism Act, the Revised Penal Code, the Cybercrime Prevention Act, and the Terrorism Financing Prevention Act. The report finds that freedom of press was respected during the campaign. Media interlocutors reported an improvement in the general atmosphere within the journalistic community, particularly at the national level. Nevertheless, long-standing challenges persisted, including attacks and intimidation against journalists, economic vulnerability, and a prevailing culture of impunity. Regarding disinformation, we find positive that the electoral administration established a dedicated task force that collaborated with 24 organizations to identify and remove harmful content. However, our findings show that some candidates boosted their campaigns by artificially increasing the number of their followers on social media. A final note to mention our findings on complaints and appeals. Although the procedures are consistent with international standards, the deadline for resolving disputes does not allow for effective remedy. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, I am confident that the Philippines will continue their reform journey. Core principles as transparency, inclusivity, secrecy of the vote, and freedom of expression are central to the success of these reforms. The European Union stands ready to support national authorities in implementing these recommendations to further strengthen the country's democratic path. All the mission's reports and statements, including this final report, are public, available to all the Filipino people. We encourage you to download them from our website and to read them. We offer these recommendations in a spirit of partnership, a partnership which has a long history between the European Union and the Philippines. This final report describes our observations during the midterm elections, so it reflects on the past. However, the recommendations we present are forward-looking, aimed at improving future electoral processes. Ultimately, it's up to you, the Filipino citizens, your elected lawmakers, the electoral administration, and civil society to determine which recommendations, which reforms will best serve the country. Naturally, we hope all of them will be implemented, but the final decision rests with the sovereign will of the country and its people.